Namo Amida Butsu. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whenever you are, in whichever realms of existence you are, whatever mind states you are in, whatever conditions you're in. You are always welcome to my channel. So Happy New Year, Happy Chinese New Year, Happy Sonam Losar, Happy Vajrayana New Year, Happy Lunar New Year. As you can see, in honor of the Year of the Dragon has come around again, I've created an image in NightCafe Studio of the Dragon King in his undersea palace, attentively listening to the Buddha. The Buddha would be over here somewhere in front of him, over here, like, yeah, back here somewhere. So, yeah. That's a little hint as to what I'm going to get to in this video, what I'm going to be doing in this video. But anyway, so I think the first thing I should talk about is, first of all, Buddhism and astrology. The teaching in Buddhism is that basically we're meant not to really use astrology as Buddhists to guide our lives. We're not used to use it to predict the future or try to run our lives by it or do anything to have it guide our actions or our thoughts or anything. We're meant to follow the teaching. Really, the teaching is for that. The teaching is for that, and the whole teaching in Buddhism is that it's karma that determines the course of our lives, not the position of the planets and celestial bodies and things like that. Now, I have to say though that karma, so karma does dictate all of that. Does dictate the wait, before I get to that, in Buddhism, there's the whole teaching of interdependence and interdependent origination, that everything is connected. Everything is connected to everything else, and everything else conditions everything else, and everything exists because of everything else. It's not, there's no, it's all completely interconnected. So of course, in just the natural flow of that, you're going to have, the the year and time and place and month of a person's birth, obviously is going to be affected by all those things. By a person's going to be affected by all those things, by the position of celestial bodies, by planets, by everything happening in the world at that moment. But that's Buddhism takes that step further back and says it's actually one's karma that determines the time and the place of one's birth, and conditions all those things. On the individual level, the time and place of your birth is determined by karma. The time, place, family, position of the stars and planets and celestial bodies, and position of the earth at that time, it's all determined by karma primarily. Not primarily only. And on the individual level, and then on the collective level, it's the position of all those, the positioning of all those planets and the stars and celestial bodies and the earth and everything at that moment is due to our collective karma as well. So again, it comes back to karma is what's determining all that. But of course, as Buddhists, we believe we're all, everything is interdependent. So everything is going to be impacted by everything else. And equally, we're going to affect the planets. Ultimately, we're going to affect the earth, the planets, the stars, everything that we do and things that we are. ultimately. So it kind of goes both ways in that sense. Um, but so with but the primary thing that's running it, that's determining all of that, the condition, time, place, culture, um, economic circumstance, family, uh, whatever, society, place on the earth is determined by your karma, not by the planets. Although that's all it, although that's also determined by your karma as well, the position of those things when you're born. So anyway, that's what I'm trying to say. And events that happen in the course of your life, then yeah, it's going to be affected by all those things, but it's because of karma. It's ultimately because of karma, both on the individual level and the collective level, that all those things are happening, and it's because of interdependence, and interdependent arising, or dependent origination, um, that all those things are connected, which brings me also to what I'm going to do tonight with the Dragon King's questions, and the response of the Buddha, what he talks about in that, because so that brings it right into that. So anyway, so that's, I wanted to say a bit about that. Now, I'm also aware that certain traditions of Buddhism do incorporate astrology into their, um, are incorporated in some way, to some extent, in their Buddhist culture, I guess you could call it, in their tradition, in their traditions, um, and that's because Buddhism, wherever it flourished, wherever it moved to and flourished, would naturally become a part of the culture that it was a part of. Instead of like, there's a lot of religions where there's a couple in particular, that when they went places, they altered the culture to conform to their religion and their culture. Um, but with Buddhism, it's almost kind of the opposite. In Buddhism, it adapts and assimilates and naturally, becomes a part of the culture that it's in, and then it then just does naturally influence that culture, in many ways. And so because of that, you're going to have, these kinds of astrological, you know, um, things that are part of those traditions. Um, and but I still don't think, obviously they go by the lunar calendar. So yeah, and they do incorporate, certain aspects, I would say, of astrology, but I don't think it's in the same way as people practice astrology outside the context of Buddhism. It's more of a skill and means. So so yeah, I meant to say that about the cultural thing, is that Buddhism would blend with the culture it was in, as a skill and means to in keeping with times and with beings, and keeping with times and the place and the people. It would adapt itself to the culture as a skill and means to be able to present Buddhism and teach the teachings in a way that that culture and that time and that place, of that time and that place, would understand it. And so it just naturally became a part of those things. And so you do have, different folk ways and different cultural aspects that are a part of, different Buddhist traditions. And again, it was all skill and means, a quite natural skill and means thing that occurred with Buddhism and Buddhist teachers and Buddhist culture. And another aspect of that is that some Buddhist traditions will use certain aspects of astrology, um, as a kind of tool. Again, a skill and means, skillful means kind of tool to present Buddhist teaching in a way that people will understand it, because that astrological, thinking, or concepts, or mimetic aspects of their culture, it's already there, and it's something they can understand. So Buddhism embraced that to be able to to kind of utilize it to put to be able to teach the teachings through it and inculcate that and cultivate that in the culture and in the lives of people through that. So it was you kind of almost used as a tool for that. Um, I would say it's almost like instead of being, you know, an you know astrological practices, it's more like a karmic, uh, you know, a karmic astronomical practice, acknowledging that karma, as I was saying earlier, that karma is what dictates all those things, the time and the place and the position of planets and the position of celestial bodies at the time of someone's birth, um, and things that are going to happen throughout the years and the cycles of time and all that. That's all determined by our culture, our collective karma, and the things with relationships in astrology that you see, that's all determined by karma too. Our relationships are determined by karma, our karmic ties and karmic, issues, um, all get, kind of repeated in one way or another at some point. And um, so it kind of, so it's almost like it's like an astronomical kind of karmic, like acknowledgement of the karmic influence of on astronomy, on astronomical forces, if you like, cosmic, forces and nature. It's an acknowledgement of karma, the karmic, the karmic causes and conditions in nature itself, so it's, do you see what I mean? I think there's a difference in the way that the different Buddhist traditions will kind of use those things. So as a kind of tool. Anyway, I hope I kind of explained that as best I could. And but this is just my own understanding of it, obviously. So take it for what you will. Right. So that was the one thing I wanted to say on this occasion of, the new year, the Lunar New Year, and on the occasion of the beginning of the year of the dragon and all of that. And I wanted to today, I thought I would read. Um, yeah, you can see I was looking up some things about Buddhism and astrology, but oh, I didn't share my screen yet. Let me do that. Share my screen. So I'm gonna be reading from this website, the 84,000 reading room. So, I presume a reference to the 84,000 Dharma gates, 84,000 teachings, 84,000 practices of Buddhism, and perhaps 84,000 sutras, throughout the 10 directions that have been given. That sort of thing. So that's where we're going to be reading for the sutra from, and it's of course going to be the questions of the Naga King Sagara. Just thought that would be an appropriate thing to read on the start of this next year, this year of the dragon that's come around again. So questions, and I'll read the introduction as well because it kind of elucidates things about the sutra and its place in a bigger text kind of thing. So questions of the Naga King Sagara. So, and this is translated into Tibetan by Surendra Bodhi Yeshe Day. I'm not going to be reading it in Tibetan, but I guess it was first translated into Tibetan and then into English, or anyway. So here we go. I'm going to read the Yeah, so I might as well read the I'll just read the introduction. So that's what I had planned. So stick with that. So introduction. In the Tibet canon, there are three sutras entitled "The Questions of the Naga King Sagara." I'm not going to try to pronounce the um, full name of the sutra, and I guess that's Sanskrit. A long version, one of middle length, and a short sutra. They have quite different contents and are all to be found in a group of sutras in the Kangyur entitled "The Questions of dot dot dot." So, including the questions of Brahma, questions of Manjushri, the questions of an old lady, and several others. There is also another Naga king whose questions were the occasion for a sutra in this group entitled "The Questions of the Naga King Anavatapta." Sorry for my terrible pronunciation there. The text translated here is the shortest of the three questions of the Naga King Sagara Sutras. Um, the Buddha's teaching The Buddha's teaching of this very brief sutra is an assembly of monks, or sorry, the Buddha's teaching of this very brief sutra to an assembly of monks is presumed from the title to be in response to a question or questions put to him by the king of the supernatural beings known as Nagas, serpents who guard the Dharma. Although in this sutra the questions themselves are not explicitly stated. The Buddha explains that the recitation of the four aphorisms of the Dharma is equivalent to the recitation of all of the 84,000 articles of the Dharma, and that they constitute the inexhaustible doctrine of the Bodhisattvas. The four are: all compounded phenomena are impermanent, nitya, all contaminated phenomena are suffering, dukkha, all phenomena are without self, and Atman, nirvana is peaceful, peace, santa santi. These four aphorisms or tenets are also called the four seals. That's what I was going to say. These are central to Buddhist philosophy and characterize the Buddhist view of the nature of reality. The Buddha stated that any doctrine characterized by these four seals is genuinely in accord with the philosophical view of Buddhism, just as a document purportedly written by a king that has proper seals is known as genuine. So because the concepts of anitya, dukkha, anatman, and nirvana are central to the Buddhist philosophical view, over the centuries, countless commentaries and elaborations on these concepts have been written by scholars from every Buddhist tradition. Various sutras and commentaries focus on one, two, three, or all four of these concepts. Indian texts speak of the four aphorisms of the Dharma as well as the four seals. The Sanskrit of the four aphorisms can be extracted from Vasubandhu's commentary to verse 18, that would be. Verse 18, section 80 of the Mahayana Sutra Lamkara of the Asanga, or of Asanga, 5th century. I'm not going to try to read Sarvasa. No, I'm not going to try to read the Sanskrit. So I'm just going to read the English translation. All compounded phenomena are impermanent. All compounded phenomena are suffering. All phenomena are without self. Peaceful is nirvana. The same four aphorisms are listed and described in chapter 17 of Asangyas, but Bodhisattva Bhumi. The only minor difference in these formulations of them compared to the four aphorisms as set out in the present sutra is that here the second aphorism does not speak of all contaminated phenomena, but simply all compounded phenomena. Although this sutra's Sanskrit original is no longer extant, the colophon of the Tibetan translation of the sutra tells us that it was translated from Sanskrit to Tibetan by the Indian preceptor Surendra Bodhi and there that explains what I was looking at earlier, and the Tibetan editor Yeshe De. So that explains what I was mentioning earlier. Actually, I didn't quite understand what that was referring to. So we can thus infer that the sutra was translated from Sanskrit to Tibetan sometime during the late 8th to early 9th century. The sutra is also included in the Chinese Buddhist canon. Oh, I don't think I'm going to read. Oh, yes, well, yeah, it's not much longer. I was just going to read that first part. But this sutra is also included in the Chinese Buddhist canon. Both the Tibetan and Chinese versions of the sutra are very similar in their brevity, meaning, and storyline, although there are a few minor differences between them. The 12th century fragment containing the sutra in the Tangut or Zizia language was discovered among other pieces in the Tangut canon at Karakoto along the Silk Road by the British explorer Sir Ariel Stein during his 1913 to 1916 journey. Now in the British Museum, the Tangut version is very close to the Chinese version, indicating that it was likely translated from Chinese. There are two other notable English translations from the Tibetan, one by Geshe Lakdor in 2010 for a workshop presented in the India Habitat Center in Delhi under the auspices of the Foundation for Universal Responsibility, and the most recent translation by Peter Skilling, along with helpful notes in his 2021 anthology, Questioning the Buddha, a selection of 25 sutras. Peter Skilling, that sounds familiar for some reason. I've discussed that with somebody, or his name came up in a Dharma discussion I was having with somebody. But anyway, the present translation from Tibetan is based on the version of the Dege or Zedge, the Dege Kangyur, with reference to the differences between this and various other versions noted in the Padurma comparative edition of the Denge Kangyur. Apologies for my pronunciation of Sanskrit and Tibetan and all the rest. It's terrible, and apologies. So, and now the sutra. So the Noble Mahayana Sutra, the questions of the Naga king. Okay, prostrations to all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Thus did I hear at one time the Bhagavan was dwelling in the place of the Naga king Sagara, together with, and the Bhagavan being the Buddha. So again, thus did I hear one time the Bhagavan was dwelling in the place of the Naga king Sagara, together with a great assembly of 1,250 bhiksus, as well as a multitude of bodhisattvas and mahasattvas. At the time, the Bhagavan said to the Naga king Sagara, Lord of the Nagas, if one utters these four aphorisms of the Dharma, in uttering them, one is expressing all of the 84,000 articles of the Dharma. What are the four? They are as follows. To fully engage in understanding the inexhaustible doctrine of the Bodhisattva Mahasattvas that all compounded phenomena are impermanent. To fully engage in understanding the inexhaustible doctrine of the Bodhisattva Mahasattvas that all contaminated phenomena are suffering. To fully engage in the understanding that the inexhaustible doctrine of the Bodhisattva Mahasattvas that all phenomena are without self. Let me read that again. To fully engage in understanding the exhaustible doctrine of the Bodhisattva Mahasattvas that all phenomena are without self, and to fully engage in understanding the inexhaustible doctrine of the Bodhisattva Mahasattvas that nirvana is peace. Lord of the Nagas, if one utters these four aphorisms of the Dharma, in uttering them, one is expressing all of the 84,000 articles of the Dharma. When the Bhagavan, or the Buddha, had spoken in this way, the bhikshus and bodhisattvas rejoiced and greatly praised the teachings of the Bhagavan. So, yeah, this part says this completes the noble Mahayana Sutra. The questions are not king. Anyway, so yeah, Namo Midabutsu, Namanda Buddha, Namanda Bhasna. That's the whole teaching. It indeed is the whole teaching. The four seals really are the whole teaching. And this question from this Naga, the Naga king Sagara allowed for that, this teaching to come. His question allowed for. So it's dragons are. This is one thing I was going to say. Dragons are, it's a huge topic. I started kind of looking into it for this occasion, with it being, the year of the dragon, and was going to do this video and da da da. And just for my own knowledge, I was looking into it, and it is like so expansive. The stuff about dragons, just dragons alone, let alone nagas, dragons alone is just huge. All the cultural stuff, the Buddhist stuff, stuff and teaching and symbolism and and worlds, the worlds of the dragons, their forms and there's just so much. It's massive, expansive, and they're so part of East Asian culture. Just a huge aspect. I mean, I knew that already, but just looking into it more deeply, you just start to see, wow, how important a part of it is, and how revered they are. They're not looked at as this horrible, monstrous creature. They're looked at as they're kind of respected and revered, and they're looked at as protectors. In fact, that was one of the the roles that was given to them by the Buddha in one of his bodhisattva forms in the past. In the Jakarta tales, there's a story about a dragon that wanted to kind of approach the Buddha and have an audience with the Buddha. Well, not the Buddha, the bodhisattva, and at that time his bodhisattva form. And there's a whole interesting thing about that too that I want to get to, related to my Lotus Pod series, actually. But I won't go into that now. But just huge. Anyway, anyway, that it was from that time they became the protectors of Buddhist temples and protectors of the Dharma and protectors of and they're often depicted as associated with certain bodhisattvas and certain Buddhist figures, and they're seen as sometimes enlightened beings, sometimes wise beings, protectors, as active, as kind of like and on the it's the same with Buddhism. Any being or teaching, it has multiple levels. So there's in Buddhism, there's an actual, there's the world of the Nagas, that the the realm of the Nagas that the dragons are a part of, the and there's also a psychological kind of aspect of that. It's a mind state, it's a world, it's a realm, it's a mind state, and it's also a symbolic uh, teaching. It's also used as teaching. So and in that aspect, they're looked at as like, an active, like a really super active, natural flow of the practice of compassion, of the practices of Buddhism, I guess. This is just my best understanding. There's just so much. I couldn't even keep it all in my. I can't even keep it all in my mind. All of the teachings and all of the traditions and all of the understandings and all of the symbology and all of the cultural aspects of dragons. Is really amazing and wonderful, actually. And I think I'm going to see I wanted to read this other, see if there was somewhere a version of this other, the other dragon, the Naga King, the questions of the Naga King, um, Anavatapta, Naga King Anavatapta. I think that's the pronunciation. Here we go. We'll look for it together. Unscripted, teleprompter free here at the Shakugankai channel. It's coming up with, I wonder if it's maybe, no, let's see if we can get, unless maybe that's just a different, did look like it was a different, yeah, here we go. Let's try this. Four Reliances. Is that where that came from? These were taught by the Buddha before his passing in sutras such as, and so this, okay, the Four Reliances were, so maybe we'll just read those instead because it came from that. If we can find it, though, it'd be great. But as I was saying, I really wanted to, on the topic of dragons, I really wanted to kind of honor the dragons through this sort of New Year's video tonight in their role kind of in Buddhism, and because it's just really amazing. They're really powerful. Oh yeah, and they're associated while I'm looking for this. They're associated with the the dragons are associated with the Mani gems and other kinds of very powerful gems. I think this is where the Dragon Ball, that anime or or manga thing, Dragon Ball Z or Dragon Ball Z. I think that's kind of where that is inspired by. But they have there's different kinds of powerful orbs or gems that are associated with them. One of them being the Mani gem, the wish fulfilling gem that a lot of a lot of bodhisattvas or Buddhas have, and the great Chakravartin king has. And somehow they're associated with that, or they're guardians of it, or these Mani gems actually are somehow birthed from them or manifested from dragons, which is pretty amazing. And oh yeah, and there's just huge involvement of the Nagas with the Buddha, from before he was in his Nirmanakara form with us, and then from his birth onward, and up to and including just after his enlightenment, they were there in his presence to protect him, and also protected him after his birth while he was being bathed. So yeah, you know what? Doesn't look like I'm going to be able to actually find the actual. What's here? Here we go. Hang on. The actual. Let me just see what this is. No, it's not actually. Okay, I think we'll just read the Four Reliances from that wiki. Yeah, from the Rigpa wiki. because that's based on that. And I listened to a reading today of, I think, that sutra by a Theravada monk, actually, who was giving a talk on bodhisattva minds and on dragons. Um, so yeah, we'll just read these. So the four, because that was these teachings are from that the sutra on the questions of the Naga king Anavatapta. So the four reliances: rely on the message of the teacher, not on his personality. Interesting. Rely on it's very important. Rely on the message of the teacher, not his personality. Not personality, indeed. That's a very important one in so many ways. Rely on the meaning, not just the words. Always talking about that with Kyokan and my Dharma brothers. Get to the meaning, not to the words. Rely on the real meaning, not the provisional one. Very key in Jodo Shinshu Buddhism. We see the Dharma through the sort of Jodo Shinshu essential teaching lens, and get the and get the real meaning, not just the provisional one. So number 4, rely on your wisdom mind, not on your ordinary judgmental mind. Indeed, but in our case, in our case, we'd be relying on Amita's wisdom mind, not our ordinary judgment mind, not our ordinary bamboo judgmental mind. We're relying on the wisdom mind of Amita, and to be able to rely, to be able to rely on or get the real meaning. We're also reliant on Amida Buddha for that. Our listening, or Amida Buddha enables us to listen, to the Dharma, to really truly hear the Dharma, and to be able to get the real meaning for us, as the teaching is for us, for me alone. So we have to very personal. It has to be very, that we have to get the real meaning directly. Well. We get the real meaning through the Jodo Shinshu teaching and through Amida Buddha's power. That's what I'm trying to say. Amida Buddha's light. Amida Buddha's working. Yeah. So anyway, that's very good. That would have came out of, again, that's very significant teaching, very important teaching. And that, again, that came as a result of a question of a Naga king, so a dragon king. So very important. So let's see here. So these were taught by the Buddha shortly before his passing away in sutras, such as the teaching of Asangyamati and the Sutra of the Questions of the Naga King, Anavatapta. They are commented upon in the works such as Asanga's Stages of Spiritual Practice. So let's see. Yeah, I might as well read these commentaries. If you do not have such a, so the Mipham Rinpoche says in the Sword of Wisdom, if you do not have such understanding, then like a blind man learning, like a blind man leaning on his staff, you can rely on fame, mere words, or what is easy to understand, and go against the logic of the four reliances. Wow, I think I'll just let that one be what it says, because it's kind of beyond me. The commentary teaching he's giving there. 1, do not rely on the individual, but on the Dharma. Boom. Big time. Oh, yes. Do not rely on the individual, but the Dharma. He also says in the Sword of Wisdom, Therefore, do not rely on individuals, but rely on the Dharma. Freedom comes from the genuine path that is taught, not the one who teaches it. Boom! Freedom comes from the genuine path that is taught, not from the one who teaches it. Boom! There's all mic drop. There's Hussu drops. Hussu dropping. There's Hussu drops everywhere in these in this in this in these commentaries and passages. Mic drops everywhere. When the teachings are well presented, it does not matter what the speaker is like. Even the bliss-gone Buddhas themselves appear as butchers and such like to train disciples. Even the bliss-gone Buddhas themselves appear as butchers and such like to train disciples. Boom. If he contradicts the meaning of the Mahayana and so on, then however eloquent a speaker may be, he will bring you no benefit, like a demon appearing in a Buddha's form. Do not rely on the words, but the meaning. Mifan Rinpoche says, whenever you study or contemplate the Dharma, rely on the words, not on the meaning. If the meaning is understood, then regardless of the speaker's style, there will be no conflict. When you have understood what it was the speaker intended to communicate, if you then continue to think about each word and expression, it is as if you've found your elephant, but now go in search of its footprints. If you misinterpret what is said and then think of more words, you never stop till you run out of thoughts. But all the while you're straying further and further from the meaning. Like children playing, you'll only end up exhausted. Even for a single word like and or but, when taken out of context, there's no end to what it might mean. Yet if you understand what is meant, then with that, the need for the word is finished. When the finger points to the moon, there we go. When the finger points to the moon, the childish will look at the finger itself. The fools attached to the mere language may think they've understood, but they will find it difficult. So much in these. Wow, so good. Do not rely on the provisional meaning, but the definitive meaning. Mifan Rinpoche says, when it comes to the meaning, you should know that the provisional is what is definitive, and rely not on any provisional meaning, but only on the meaning that is true definitively. The omniscient one himself is in all his wisdom, taught according to students' capacities and intentions. Kind of like I was saying earlier in the very beginning of the video, the way that Buddhism was presented and taught, presenting vehicles of various levels, just like rungs of a ladder, just like rungs of a ladder. Wisely he spoke with certain intentions in his mind, as with the 8 kinds. Wisely he spoke with certain intention in his mind, as with the 8 kinds of implied and indirect teachings. If these were to be taken literally, they might be invalidated. But they were taught for specific reasons. Do not rely on the ordinary mind, but rely on wisdom. Mifan Rinpoche says, when taking the definitive meaning into experience, do not rely upon the ordinary dualistic mind that chases after words and concepts, but rely upon non-dual wisdom itself, that which operates with conceptual ideas is the ordinary mind, whose nature involves perceiver and perceived. All that is conceived in this way is false and will never touch upon the actual nature of reality. Any idea of real or unreal, both or neither, any such concept, however it's conceived, is still only a concept. And whatever ideas we hold in mind, they are still within the domain of Mara. This has been stated in the Sutras. It is not by any assertion or denial that it is not by any assertion or denial that we will put an end to concepts. It is not by any assertion or denial that we will put an end to concepts. But once we see without rejecting or affirming, there is freedom. Although it is without any subject-object grasping, there is naturally occurring wisdom that illuminates itself. And all ideas of existence, non-existence, both and neither have ceased completely. This is said to be supreme primordial wisdom. The definitive meaning can, and this is just, I guess, more from the wiki, the definitive meaning can either be understood conceptually by means of ideas, or it can be experienced directly in the object of non-consensual awareness wisdom. As long as you are caught in the conceptual extremes of negation and affirmation, existence and non-existence, and so on, you will not go beyond the realm of the ordinary mind. When you arrive at the sublime experience of wisdom, and all dualistic ideas have been pacified, you are in harmony with nature, with the nature of reality, which is beyond any kind of refutation and establishment or denial and affirmation. And you have reached the true depths of the Dharma. Boom. Now, obviously, in Jodo Shinshu, we're Bambu. We are the ordinary mind. We will, it says, you have not, so we're always going to be caught. We're always going to be caught up in conceptual extremes of negation and affirmation, existence and non-existence, and so on. And we won't, with our ordinary Bambu minds, foolish idiots that we are, we will not, be able to go beyond the realm of the ordinary mind without Amida. Amida will bring us beyond the realm of the ordinary mind through his natural working of his vow, through Shinjin arising, through that we don't get that here. We don't go beyond the ordinary mind here in this life. We do when we die and go to Pure Land. Once Shinjin has arisen and we are at that stage of Amida brings us to the stage of non-retrogression, then when we die, we go to Pure Land, and that's when we go beyond the realm of the ordinary mind. We get the Buddha mind. But we realize the Buddha mind. We realize Buddha nature. We realize through Amida's power. When you arrive at this, we read it this way: when you arrive at the sublime experience of wisdom through Amida Buddha's primal vow, and all dualistic ideas have been pacified through Amitabha's, primal vow, you are in harmony with the nature of reality, which is beyond any kind of refutation or establishment or denial and affirmation, and you have reached the true depths of the Dharma. Of course, in Pure Land, when we become Buddhas, and then immediately come back in numerous forms to help beings. But yeah, that was really great to read that, actually. And that's all that came about, the Four Reliances and these commentaries on the Four Reliances, partly because of a Naga king's question, a Dragon king's questions. So again, very significant. Those are very significant teachings, and that's so, both those, that, the Four Reliances and the Four Seals came about because of the involvement of Dragon Kings asking questions. So that's a huge thing, just that alone, let alone all the other stuff. I'll probably go over that in my, go get into more detail about the dragons as part of the Naga realm. Um, in my Lotus Pod series. But so anyway, I just wanted to do this tonight. I thought it'd be enjoyable. I really enjoyed doing it, and researching for it, and going through and reflecting on these things. I just wanted to point out something here over here. The way this is said, that this is something I was reflecting on as I was doing, researching all this, and just um, um, the way we oh yeah, it came about because when I was listening to that, to the Theravada teacher that was talking about the Bodhisattva mind and the dragons, um, and he was no, he's just talking about the Bodhisattva teachings, different traditions basically. And oh yeah, it was the 10 mind. That's right. They did go with the 10 minds. Yeah. Anyway, it was just something what he did in the beginning, um, really made me reflect. The basically the meditative stuff that he took, the those present online and present in the temple where he was. um, he took them through the kind of meditative practice in the beginning to prepare the mind to listen to the Dharma. It just occurred to me that, when we're, our deep listening practice and deep reflection in Jodo Shinshu, we are meant to be doing. This is all enabled by Amida's power, and by Amida's vow, by the natural working of Amida's vow. All this is enabled, but we're meant to be listening with our whole heart, our whole mind, our whole body, our whole being, our whole life when we're listening to that, enabled by Amida. But when we're listening to the Dharma, when we're listening to the teachings, whether we're reading them or literally listening to them, or we're having Dharma discussion, a Dharma dialogue, or we're deeply reflecting, this is what we're meant to be doing with our whole body, whole mind, whole heart, mind, whole emotions, our whole thing, our whole true self. I mean, we don't have access to the Buddha nature, that's our true self, but our whole existence as Bambu, really, we're supposed to put into that. It's really, I mean, it's not a self-power thing. That's all enabled by Amida. Um, but it's supposed to be, we're supposed to hear in that way. Renyo actually says something along those lines. I can't remember the exact quote at this time, but that was something as I was reflecting on that, was just, it just really came out while I was listening to that part of before the Dharma talk, before the reading of the sutra that he read and things. I was really, that reflection came very, very strongly, and it kind of got reinforced here in something in this, the actual sutra itself, when it says to fully, to fully engage in understanding the inexhaustible doctrine of the Bodhisattva Mahasattvas, to fully engage, to fully engage, to fully engage, to fully engage. That's what we're meant to do with the teaching, with the Dharma dialogue, with deep listening, with deep reflection, fully engage through Amida's power. We're meant, enabled by Amida to fully engage in his practice, in his teaching, in his realization, in his, you know, um, what he gives us through the power of his vow. We're meant to, enabled by that, engage in the teachings fully, to fully engage. So I just thought that jumped out when I was listening to that, connected to the reflection I was having that I just mentioned earlier when I was listening to Theravada teacher, but or monk. So yeah, so thanks for joining me for this New Year's Dharma activity, and honoring of the dragons, and their super significant role in Buddhism. Huge, huge. Can't wait to get to that. Can't wait to get to talk about the Nagas. I love the Nagas. I love the dragons. It's one of my favorite aspects of Buddhist cosmology and Buddhist and beings. Just favorite aspects of all the beings in the multiple worlds of Buddhism. But anyway, so thanks very much. I'll just say some Nambutsu to take us out, and Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namanda Butsu, Namanda Butsu, Namanda Butsu, Nama. All right. Thanks very much for listening. Happy New Year, and much metta of Amida to everyone. Take care. All the best.